Welcome into your betting preview for this week's WM Phoenix Open. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there, Andy Lack. Andy, this is a big boy event. Finally, a true designated, elevated event.
Would you say most excited you've been for a golf tournament since what, the Open Championship?
Yes, and it's not just this. It's this, and then there's a Super Bowl, and then next week is Riviera, and then it's going to be like players before you. This is such a good golf time on the calendar, and the designated events, or whatever you want to call them, are working like they were supposed to, right? Like this is our first glimpse at them where you get everyone in the same spot. So yeah, I'm pretty jacked up about it.
Do you feel like, I was going to ask, because do you feel like anything changes for you in terms of the actual event outside of the fact that they're competing for more money? Do you think do you think there'll be like a different vibe during the week, atmospheric wise, or anything like that?
I don't know. I think it is always different when you get all the guys in one spot, right? So like when you
Right.
look around and groups are like Rory and Rom and JT and there's Colin and there's Vic, and it's just like, oh my God, everywhere you turn, there's something happening and they seem to always find their way to the top of the board. So no, I don't think it's like when I get there, I will not think once about how much money is being made, which I never would anyway, right?
Right.
I never watch a guy hit a shot and I'm like, oh, wow, he's playing for 1.5 million or two and a
Yeah,
half
or even
million.
like that, he lost 200K for missing
Yeah.
that putt. Yeah.
Like, I don't care, but like, I think it'll feel different because you're just going to have so many of the best players in one spot.
Well, I'm incredibly excited for you. I wish I was joyful. Is it your first time down in Phoenix at this
Yeah.
event?
Yeah. I've never been to TPC Scott. I've never even been to Phoenix. So to have that
Wow.
along with all the Super Bowl stuff that'll be going on, like I'm imagining a pretty electric atmosphere and hopefully that it lives up to it.
Are you going to hang out at 16? Is that your scene? I can't really tell if, like, now we've been to Vegas together and stuff, but I don't know if I take you for like chugging beers and taking your shirt off at
No.
16 type guy.
No, and I'm also not like a big crowds guy, which is gonna be a problem considering there's gonna be
Right.
like 210,000 people there or whatever it is on Saturday. No, I mean, I will definitely check out 16. I'll
Sure.
definitely go check it out. I gotta get the vibe for it, see what's happening, but I don't see me camping out there. I see myself walking around, following specific groups, doing the normal stuff that I would do. I'm not going to get in there and start like, yeah, shotgunning beers and smashing them into my head or anything like that.
Well, I hope they give us some really good tee times this week, right? Like
Yeah.
give us that Rory Rom showdown that we've been waiting for, right? And we'll get into it in a second when we start talking about the odds board, but the thing that I'm probably most excited for is like I think we are really really going to get a great barometer of like who should be the favorite for the Masters, right? Who is in the best lead-in form heading into the Players, right? Because this is a course, like I've talked about a bunch of times before, and Torrey Pines does fit that bill as well, though this feels a little bit different, where, it's a ball striker's course, and I think we can learn a lot about where these elite players' games are at heading into this awesome stretch that we have ahead of us.
Yeah, and like no course rotation BS. Just like let's go play the same course 4 times and put all the best players there and see who comes out on top. So absolutely stoked for it. Here's the board that you were referencing. This is the grid via odds checker. Two guys standing alone at the top, Rom and Rory. 9-1 are their best numbers that are available. And then we can lump in the next three. I would say it's Scotty at 14-1, Xander at 16, Tony Finau at 20. It's a lot of win equity at the top. Do we pass it up or do we click a name?
Well, I see that the Finau, it's a very small screen for me, but there's not any 25s out there on Finau anymore.
There's a 20. 20 is the best number available.
Yeah, I hit that 25 this morning. That felt a bit irresponsible to me, Rick. I don't understand why there were 25s hanging out there on Tony Finau, who's won 3 times in his last 9 starts. I mean, I run my numbers every week. You can find all of this stuff in the article that I wrote for the website this week, but I have Tony Finau as the number one golfer in this field. I mean, he rated out higher than Rory and Rahm for me. I just think what he's doing right now from a ball striking standpoint is pretty damn immaculate. And to me, I wouldn't have blinked if he was in the Xander and Scheffler range. I wouldn't have blinked if he was above Cantlay. I wouldn't have blinked if he was, 14, 15 to 1 this week, Rick. So for me, my guy is Tony, if we're talking at the top.
Yeah, obviously he probably feels like he should have won one of these already. I think he had a 2-shot lead with 2 to go. Webb got him into a playoff and then beat him into a playoff in, I guess that was 2020, 2021.
Yeah,
Maybe?
I guess maybe the reason why people are a little bit lower on him is he has a very strange course history here where
Yeah.
he's played here 7 times. He's missed the cut 5 times, but he also has a second place finish and a performance like you see, I believe, in 2015, where he gained like 11 strokes ball striking, right? So it's not like this course doesn't fit his eye. Does the 5 missed cuts worry you at all?
No, I think he is a completely different than even last year. He's a completely different golfer right now. I there were some tweets that I put out at the end of the calendar year. He's literally one of the highest upside golfers of the year, right? I mean, I think there were only 5 instances of guys gaining 18 strokes to the field in a single tournament. He had like 3 of them, right? Like it's just, yeah, I get it. Like I totally get it.
So is there any one of these other guys like Xander, Scheffler? I mean, and I guess like even if we're talking starting your DraftKings lineup for one and done, if you had to pick between Rory and Rahm, who would you pick as a better week?
Probably Rory.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I think Rory's.
I think I'd go Rahm given the course history.
Yeah, and I'm not going to blame you for that, right? I mean, this is I think it's splitting hairs. I think they're clear. I think they're pretty clearly. What have they won? 7 of their last 14 combined events, or something like that. It's of course they're going to be great, but it is interesting because I like Scotty a lot. I don't think I'd I'd rather bet Finau at 20 or even start my card like in the next section here. But I think I'm higher on Scotty than most are, just because, Rahm and Rory are eating up a lot of oxygen. The Finaus are here and Cantlay and Colin and all that stuff. But I think I'm higher on Scotty than most.
Okay. So it's interesting because we have these nice little pairings, but if I asked you, let's just do a little thought exercise here. If I asked you Rory, Rahm, you're going Rory, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go Rahm. If you're going Xander, Scotty, you're going Scotty.
That's right.
Okay, I think I'd go Xander. If you're going Finau, Cantlay, I'm going Finau.
I would go Finau.
And then Morikawa, JT is the final one.
I think it's Colin pretty clearly for me.
Interesting. Okay, I think we're opposed on all 4 of those, which is interesting, but it's cool because you're starting to see like this is how the Masters odds board is going to shake out, right? Is who kind of wins these little head-to-heads between these guys at the top.
Yeah, and it's so good that we have so many of these guys that we can actually ask those questions and have them be close enough that we can be split. Like it's so good. That next tier is Cantlay at 21, as short as 18, as long as 21. Morikawa at 22. JT is also at 22. Homa is also at 22. And then Sungjae rounds out the rest of the guys. You get a pretty decent number on Sungjae, 28 to 1 at its longest, 22 at his shortest. So this is the, I don't know, second tier of golfer, Andy.
Yeah, I had a busy morning this week. I mean, there were some really good numbers, Rick, and I went a little crazy, man. There was a lingering 24 on Justin Thomas, which I hit, and there was a lingering 39 on Sungjae M, which I also hit. Here's my thing with JT, Rick. I think this is a good question for you too. Who do you think of the elite players most needs a win? Not like any of these guys have something to prove, but who do you think of the elite players is most due for a win?
That's a good one. What was Cantlay's last win?
BMW. Like 7-8 starts ago, honestly.
Feels longer than that.
It does. It does.
I guess where you're taking me, and I guess I would have to agree, is that it's Justin Thomas, which is nuts because he won a major last year.
I know. But my thing with JT, right, is the guy wins. The guy from ages 21 to 27 wins 15 times on the PGA Tour. He wins 15 times on the PGA Tour. He's like, by the age of 27, he's on pace for like a historically great career. And then over the last 2 years, he's won 2 tournaments, right? And don't get me wrong, not 2 tournaments to stick your nose up at. We're talking about the Players and the PGA Championship. But this was a guy that really made his bones just racking up wins on the PGA Tour. And over the last 24 months, he's only won twice. I feel like there's a little bit of a correction coming with that. I feel like he's been a little bit on the wrong side of variance with these ones. And here's the thing with JT, and this happened when I hit him at the Players at 20-1. Like there's some pretty good hard and fast rules in golf, and you can do this with like Morikawa when he hits the 30s. When JT hits the 20s, like I'm in. And he usually doesn't stay there for too long. So when I saw the 24 this morning, I was all in on Justin Thomas.
I'm happy to give JT the benefit of the doubt in the resume that you discussed. I'm fine with that. What level of concern do you have about the fact that he is a tour average approach player going back to the US Open?
Yeah, it's weird, right? I mean, this is the strongest aspect of his game. And for honestly months now, I mean, you look at the last 2 times that he was really JT on approach, you have to go back to that back-to-back stretch of the US Open and the Canadian Open.
Right.
I think this is a golf course that fits his eye really well off the tee, like or off the tee and on approach. If you look at his ball striking numbers in Phoenix, I want to say this is off the top of my head. Yeah, he gained 10.5 strokes ball striking last year, right? So if you want to talk about like get right spots on a course that clearly fit his game and fit his eye, and I think that matters on this course because there's some pretty like shaky and uncomfortable and interesting tee shots and interesting approach shots. We didn't talk too much about the course, but like there's a lot of trouble on this course. Like you've got to golf your ball. It ranked 5th out of 38 courses in penalty strokes per round last year. But yeah, I would say that I'm at like a 4 out of 10 in terms of concerns about his iron play. And, if he again is like a neutral iron player this week, then the alarm bells, you can ring him, but I'm not quite there yet.
Also has putted well historically at TPC Scottsdale. Maybe he can read those greens a little bit better. The 30s have some names as well. Actually, the 30s and the 40s. Cam Young back from Saudi Arabia, 30-1. Hideki's at 33. We know his history around this place. Tom Kim, 33. Victor at 35. Spieth. Fitzpatrick at 40. Yeah, those are the big names before we get to 50s and beyond.
Yeah, I guess if we're like being a little bit liberal and grouping Sungjae into this category, Sungjae would be my favorite. But this is an interesting range. Now you're starting to talk about players that at least, they have 1 or 2 question marks next to them, right? You're not getting that like immaculate resume that you're getting with a Rory or Rahm. I like Cameron Young a lot this week. I really do. I have room for like one guy in the 35 to 45 range. And I would say at this current moment in time, I'm leaning towards Cam Young. I wish that we had numbers from his second place finish at the Saudi International, but that's not even a Euro Tour event. That's an Asian Tour event, which I don't even want to know what it takes to find numbers from the Asian Tour, right? But are you concerned at all about the travel aspect of it with Cam Young?
Generally, no. Generally not. I mean, if what's worse, flying back from Saudi Arabia first thing Sunday morning here in the States, or having to be at Pebble until Monday, like afternoon.
He's flying privately, right?
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean,
I bet you the appearance fee can cover a couple private.
And I'm sure that they hook him up with that as well. It's not coming out of his pocket. So he's 30. I thought I saw some like much better numbers than that.
There were some
day or two ago.
There were some big time Cam Young numbers. There were some big times. What about your boy Sam Burns? Did you hop on? I think there was like a 55 earlier.
Yeah. That's just that's kind of the thought process that I have with JT, which is why I could probably get there on both of them. It's like, just this guy's better than this number indicates.
Irresponsible. Yeah.
Yeah, and
55, he wins way too much for that.
he wins too much. You know, he's been in the mix at Torrey before. He's been in the mix at Riviera before. He played well at the American Express where he gained across the board. I was hoping to see him at Torrey Pines. We didn't get that. Obviously, it's a packed schedule this, coming up here. So he was probably just getting right. But I thought that was, too big for a guy who like could win twice a year.
Totally agree. I mean, I think now you're at the point where it seems like books are probably starting to like compete with each other over numbers. And that's why I think it's such a great week to use and utilize the odds checker grid. Because I mean, you look at it and it's like, man, Jason Day is as low as 40-1 at some places and as high as 70-1 at some places. My issue once you start getting down here, Rick, is like, I don't know if I would go below any of these names that we're looking at. I just think there's too much star power at the top. I really have the sense, just kind of in my bones this week, that this one is going to be won by one of those top 10 players on the odds board.
I'll give you, I tend to agree, but I'll give you two more options here because they are such big discrepancies, as you mentioned. Keegan Bradley is as long as 80, as short as 50. Ricky is as long as 80, as short as 55. Keegan, obviously, great ball striker. He did it again at Torrey Pines. He's putting better. He's won the Zozo, obviously a strong field, nowhere near what he's going to get this week, but it's there. And then Ricky, who you got to zoom out a little bit further than JT, right? Like you got to zoom out a little bit further, but if he is getting right, this is probably the best spot for him.
Yeah, if I asked you in terms of like career renaissance, who do you have more confidence in going forward? Both are on my fantasy team, by the way. Jason Day or Ricky Fowler?
I love the Day stuff because he seems healthy, but I always feel like he's like one swing away from that not being good anymore. So I reluctantly say Ricky, but
okay, me too. I think so. I think I get caught up in the swing videos, and I'm a sucker for what it seems like he seems to be working on with his full swing right now.
Yeah, it looks a lot better. The stats are kind of presenting a similar story. The putter's coming back, which was an issue for a long time, and then the history around Phoenix is pretty much immaculate. The win, I think, a couple of runner-up finishes, a handful more top 10, stuff like that. So good stuff there. Is that it? Is that the line, right? Like, I mean, as far as actual outrights go, we're now in like the Siwoo Kim, Billy Horschel, Tom Hoagie range.
Yeah, as far as outright goes, yes. There's some interesting guys down here that I will write about for DFS purposes, in my Wednesday article, and I'm sure I'll answer some start-sit questions as well when we're talking season-long fantasy. But no, I think this one gets won by somebody below 50-1, and I have some good things to say about our guy Aaron Wise, and Brian Harmon is interesting here. But I think if we're talking outrights and if we're talking one and done, it's a big guy this week, man. I think it's a big guy.
The matchup market is probably where I'll get exposure to some of those other interesting guys that you mentioned, like Lucas Herbert. It hasn't been on the PGA Tour. He's been awesome, right?
Didn't he finish top 5 in Saudi?
Finished third in Saudi. Had finished top. I think it was back-to-back third place finishes there and Dubai. And he's feeling it right now. There's a matchup of him versus Joel Damon, and then JT Poston, who's got 3 straight T21s, a T6, has been great in Phoenix, him against JJ Spawn. So like those are the guys. I agree with you. Like Lucas Herbert's not going to win this golf tournament. JT Poston's not going to win this golf tournament. We'll see what kind of their roster rate is when we get to DFS, but like I'm clicking some matchups with these guys because I'm a believer in them.
Yeah, and even the one that I'm just looking at on the screen here that's right below the two that you just mentioned, like Fitzpatrick might be hurt right now, right? Like we watched him at Pebble Beach. He was, I think he kind of finally turned it around at the tail end of his round, but when I turned on the screen, he was like 5 over. And yeah, you have to weigh a little bit of juice, but you're getting him in a matchup against Hideki, who has won this tournament twice, right? And he seems to be fully healthy. So that's another one that has my attention.
Yeah. I mean, Matt Fitzpatrick ended up being pretty honest he was like, I'm not 100%. And this is a warm up, and his play kind of reflected that. So interesting to see. There are a couple of other ones where you get like Max Homa versus Tony Finau, probably priced pretty fairly there, but then you
Yeah,
can
it's a
get
good one.
like Rahm and Rory if you just want access to the big
That's
dogs.
a
I mean,
fun one.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good ones here. The other one that I saw, I gotta find it, but I was looking at um, the strokes gain distribution, and
Mhm.
Terrell Hatton has been just gaining like 1 stroke to the field per round and an outrageous amount. Like, he has no ceiling whatsoever. The ceiling is not there, but he is just like gaining a stroke every single round that he plays. And there was a Hatton versus Lowry. And I
Mm.
know you're a Lowry guy,
Huge Lowry guy.
but Lowry hasn't been good since the win.
He has not. He has not. And it's my first time I'm getting to use him on my fantasy team this week. So I'm like tentatively excited, but you're right. He hasn't been. Can I ask you a question too? What is the Hero Cup? Did that one just like fly right over? Like what?
Yeah,
I was looking at that on the website and like, what is the Hero Cup? Did we
yeah,
talk about the Hero
it's
Cup?
like the European Tour's President's Cup. So it is continental Europe versus Great Britain and Ireland, I believe. So it was
Ah,
like Tommy Fleetwood, Alex Noren, Shane Lowry, Seamus Power played in it. It was like those types of guys. I think it's a 3-day event, and I think continental Europe won it.
gotcha.
But
Well,
I just
if
put it
he's
in.
two, that's bad. He didn't
Correct. That's
win.
second. Correct. Yeah. So this is just the reason I put it in there, and it has, no strokes gained or no stats or anything, is I want people to know he played, right? Like, he played an event that week. He was not
Right,
dark.
which I love.
Yeah.
I think that's important to have on the site. Yeah, again, tentative excitement around Shane Lowry this week. Don't know if he'll make my betting card, although like a 66-1 is like definitely a fair number on him. But yeah, I would say definitely utilize that matchup market if you're trying to make some decisions at the top with guys and you don't want to pay that price, some of the higher prices like Rahm and Rory.
Let's continue this conversation. We will briefly preview the props board and then talk about those one and done options. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. Okay, so for props, my apologies to the guys over at PrizePicks. We are recording this early. That's my fault. I'm headed to Phoenix, so the props aren't out yet. Now, Andy, when you talk about some of the more demanding shots at TPC Scottsdale, is there anything in particular that you want to keep an eye on for when this prop market does drop? And also, if I remember correctly, it's usually a pretty big prop week. We might get like, what score a guy's going to make on 16? What are they going to make on 7?
Yeah.
Like, it's usually this is where we start to get that really cool stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, we don't have it in front of us yet,
No.
but one thing that I would look out for, actually, two things that I would look out for, and we talk about this with PrizePicks a lot, where it seems like they don't always account for like the long-term course data that me and you are looking at. So, a couple things with this course just to monitor right off the bat. Pretty low driving accuracy percentage here, right? And it's not like the fairways are as narrow as Torrey Pines. They're like 13th out of 38th in fairway width. So they're like narrower than tour average, but not crazy narrow. The issue is that the course is really firm and fast, and it's a pretty like driver heavy course. So like players are enticed to play aggressively off the tee because the rough isn't that much of a problem. So you do end up seeing a really low driving accuracy percentage here. So one thing I would look for off the bat is what do those fairway props look like? If you start to see some of those a little bit on the higher end, I would lean towards under. And then the other thing that I would just take a look at, like at a macro level for PrizePicks, is monitor this as the week goes on, because this is one of those events where the course tends to get a lot harder as the tournament progresses. And the reason
Right.
for that is pretty simple, right? You're playing in a giant canyon. The course gets firmer and faster as the week goes on. The more sunlight, unless they're watering these greens like crazy, which they've done a pretty good job of not doing over the past couple of years. And that's what I think is kind of fun about this event. And I wrote about this in the article too, is it's like, it always seems like you get pretty easy scoring conditions on Thursday and Friday. And then we get to the weekend and guys are ejecting left and right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, if you're kind of looking out for one thing and playing PrizePicks day by day, maybe lean towards like scoring unders on Thursday and Friday and look at some overs on Saturday and Sunday.
I love that. Makes complete and perfect sense. One and done options. So you mentioned we got to use a big boy, but before we do that, let me give you the update from last week. I went with
He made the cut. He made the cut, Rick.
Jordan Spieth made the cut. He did. 19,620. Tom Hoagie also made the cut. My selection, 22,821. So essentially no change in this year-long standings. 1.874 for me, 232,000 for you. 232,000, Andy, that's going to be like 60th place this week. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but this is a massive purse with a lot of money at the top.
This is it. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, Rick, but I can't afford a bad week. I can't afford it. I can't. This is crunch time, baby, for me. I know it's early. This is the 6th event of the season. Mm-hmm. And for most people in one and done pools, it's only their 5th. We did Kapalua, but this is crunch time for me. The winner gets $3.6 million. I know who I have in mind. Do you want to go first?
Yes, I believe I'm required to go first. So I'm obviously going to spend a big boy. That big boy that I've opted for is Scottie Scheffler.
Okay.
You good with that?
Oh, I'm good with that. No, that is a good pick. Should I reveal mine, or do you want to take a quick second to talk like general strategy?
Yeah. So general strategy, I think it's actually quite simple, right? It's kind of the first full field designated event. The Tournament of Champions was as well, but this is kind of your first full field one. I think it's pretty clear that you have to burn a big boy, and you have a lot of options to do so. I think that there might, there's really no reason to save anyone. I guess the only person you'd consider saving would be whoever you want to save for the players, because I think that's going to be the only purse that's higher. That's going to be 25
Is this
million.
a higher purse than the majors?
Well, those won't be announced until the major week, but historically, like if you look back at last year's purses, yes, I think the Masters last year was 15. I think the PGA was 17 and a half.
Okay.
So this is it. I mean, like, you got to use somebody.
Okay, real quick, because I got to get out of here for a podcast too, but quick prediction on who you think will be most popular, and then I will give you my pick for our one and done.
As of right now, Xander Schauffele on officefootballpool.com site-wide picks is 18% owned. John Rahm, 12. Hideki at 8, Sahith at 6.5. I cannot imagine using Sahith here ever.
Yeah, that's weird to me.
6% on Homa and Finau.
Okay, so I'm going to use a guy that I think is not only a good play for us, but might actually end up being a good play in larger contests too. I'm going to burn Morikawa.
Yeah. Yep.
You like that?
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
I wrote him up in Golf Digest. I will likely end up betting him when I log on here in a bit. Yeah,
25's a good number, right?
He's ready. It's happening. Yeah.
Irons are back. Iron numbers from Torrey were great. Let's do it, Colin.
Love it. Put him in a dome with no wind and watch him fire at darts. Okay. Scottie Scheffler versus Colin Morikawa. Andy Lack, much appreciated, sir. All his work available on RickRunGood.com. You can follow him on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for the WM Phoenix Open. Good luck.